Do you? That's why he's slow getting here.
All right, 1 Kings 18. Wednesday night, 1 Kings 18.
Bro.
The day Elijah enjoyed a Carmel appeal.
Oh, First King.
He's going to appeal to God from Mount Carmel. 1 Kings 18. Martin Luther, he said, one with God is a majority. One with God is a majority. So here we have Elijah, and you remember Elijah spent all that time next to the brook where God took care of him. Well, the brook just got drier and drier. And then God had the ravens, unclean birds. No telling where they got the meat from and the bread. But they brought him day after day, twice a day. They brought him what he needed to eat. And the brook provided what he needed to drink. The brook went dry. And he waited, and God told him go to Zarephath. And there would be a widow there. So he got a dry brook, and he got an impoverished widow that he gets sent to. And then God blesses that situation where we studied a couple of weeks ago, where the widow's jars of flour and oil never went dry until the rains would come. And her son actually died, and Elijah was able to raise the son from the dead. And now, after 3.5 years, before God said, go hide yourself. Now it's 3.5 years later, and God's saying, go show yourself. So it's time to come out of hiding. But God's been preparing him for those 3.5 years, for this moment to come out of hiding. So God is either bringing you out for service or preparing you for the next service, the next thing that he has on your calendars. So God is never stagnant. He's always continuing to work, and he's using these events to prepare you for even bigger events, because those experiences by the brook and at the widow's house have prepared Elijah to face hundreds of false prophets here on this mountaintop. So verse 1, it happened that after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, go show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the face of the earth. So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was very severe in Samaria. Now Ahab, this is how you can tell the famine is so bad, because the king is going to get involved in trying to find a solution. Ahab called Obadiah, not the one who wrote Obadiah in the prophetic section, but a different one, who was over the household. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for when Jezebel destroyed the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave, and provided them with bread and water. You put 100 preachers in a cave together, I don't know what's going to happen. But he put them in there. He put them in 2 caves, 50 and 50. You had to put the Baptists over here.
Yeah.
All right. So you got Obadiah. He works for Ahab. But while he's working for Ahab, he's really working for the Lord, because his name means servant of Yahweh. And here he is in the palace, working for Ahab, but he's hiding the prophets from harm. He's got firsthand knowledge about what Jezebel's got planned for these guys, and she is persecuting the legitimate people, priests of God, and Obadiah is trying to save them the best he can. All right, verse 5. Then Ahab said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the valleys. Perhaps we will find grass. Keep the horses and mules alive, and not have to kill some of the cattle. So they divided the land between them to survey it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went the other way by himself. So Ahab's involved in this, and he's feeling the full effects of this famine. That's why he's out there now. So it's pretty dire. But Ahab is seeking relief. He's not seeking the reason for this. He's not trying to figure out why this is happening. When David, when he was experiencing a drought, he sought the Lord. And the Lord gave him the answer and the solution for the drought to go away. And you may have a famine in your life, you may have a drought, and you may just be seeking relief. A lot of people do, and not seeking the reason for it. That's the reason a lot of people come to church in America, because they're seeking relief. They're thinking God can fix something. They're not looking for the root cause of things in their life. They're just looking for a quick solution. And we live in a country now that we are experiencing a lot of famines, a lot of droughts in America. There's a famine for truth. There's a drought of character. There's starving for morals. There's dying of thirst from broken families, damaged children. Nobody's asking the reasons. They're just seeking different ways, politics, to bring relief. Instead of finding out what the reason is, if my people will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, God's going to hear, and God's going to begin to heal. And that when the people of the land turn back to God, then God can begin to heal the land, starting with God's people, but the whole land has got to turn to Him. So Obadiah was on the way. Behold, Elijah. He runs right smack. He went looking for grass, and he ran into grace. Ran right smack into Elijah, and he recognized him after 3.5 years. Fell on his face and said, "Is this you, Elijah, my master?" He said, "It's I. Go say to your master, behold, Elijah is here." Every time I read that, I think of that movie back in the 70s. Tell him Willie Boy is here. Tell him Elijah is here. So Obadiah stumbles. By God's sovereignty, he stumbles into God's solution. Stumbled into God's solution. That's usually how we find it. We're not looking in the right place, but God just kind of throws it in our path. So after 3 years of looking in every cave, every corner, Elijah is discovered. Now Obadiah, he knows that they've been looking for Elijah. And so he's not too up on the idea of him going to Ahab and telling them he's found Elijah. He says, "What sin have I committed that you're giving your servant into the hand of Ahab to put me to death? As the Lord your God lives, there's no nation or kingdom where my master has not sent to search for you. And when they said he's not here, he made the kingdom or nation swear that they could not find you. And now you're saying, go say to your master, behold, Elijah's here. It'll come about that when I leave you, that the Spirit of the Lord will carry you where I do not know. So when I come and tell Ahab and he can't find you, he'll kill me. Although I, your servant, have feared the Lord from my youth." So he's afraid to go back. He's saying, this is like an Elvis sighting or a Bigfoot or a Loch Ness Monster. You know, he said, "I saw it. Hey, it's gone." So he knows what goes on with Elijah. He keeps getting zipped off. And he's eventually going to get taken away in a chariot. But he's afraid to take his eyes off of him. Verse 13 it says, "Has it not been told to my master what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord? That I hid 100 prophets of the Lord by 50s in a cave, and provided them with bread and water. And now you are saying, go say to your master, behold, Elijah is here. He'll kill me." He said, "Elijah, have you forgotten how Ahab and his wife are crazy? I mean, that they are on the warpath for prophets, and they're just looking for a reason to take my life? And if I mislead them about you, the biggest thing that they are concerned about right now," he's not thinking that he can trust Elijah. But Elijah said, or make sure that God won't take him away. Elijah said, "As the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today." So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him. And Ahab went to meet Elijah. So here it is, like high noon. Over 3 years later, no rain, not even dew, and they meet again. The first thing that happens when they meet each other is they disagree on whose fault all this is. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is this you, O troubler of Israel?" And Elijah said, "I've not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, because you've forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed the Baals." Or Baal. We're going to say Baal. So Ahab accuses Elijah of being, the word for troubler is like a snake, like the poison of a snake. You're the poison. You're the problem. I mean, he's so blind. He doesn't see that he is the cause of this, and that he is bringing this calamity on his nation, and so he's looking for a direction to point his finger.
Scapegoat.
Yeah, remember Nero? Nero, who did he blame when Rome was burning? He blamed the Christians.
Gentiles, yeah. Christians, yeah.
And lost politicians, they like to point the finger at God and at God's people. They say, you people are spreading hate. You people are intolerant. You don't care about women's rights. That's why you want to get rid of abortion. You're homophobic. Now, you guys are the poison. You're the troublers of America. They don't realize that America's problems are stemming from America turning to God. That's why America has the problems it is. It has. All right, this is what Elijah says. Send and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. That's where she had her prophets. Asherah was the lady goddess. So Ahab sent a message among all the sons of Israel and brought the prophets together at Mount Carmel. Now, when Lynn and I were in San Francisco, we took a long 7-mile hike, and we came across a pink building, which was the Church of the Goddess. Asherah was probably, if I'd have ran in there and yelled, Asherah, they probably would have said, yeah, you're in the right place. That's what Jezebel was all about. You know, women kind of, Oprah, you know, they kind of worship that woman figure. And here you have Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. And it looks like they stayed home because Jezebel stayed home. So it looks like the only ones that are mentioned are the prophets of Baal later. So even though he invites both groups to come, the prophets of Baal are the ones to show up. And Mount Carmel was a place where they worshiped Baal. So it was like home field advantage. He said, all right, we'll play it in your ballpark. We'll meet on Mount Carmel. That's where you already go for your worship. So it ought to be easy. Baal will know where that is. So Elijah came near to all the people, and he makes this direct challenge to the people. This is the one verse that really stands out and the one that I memorized early in my life. It's like, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. It says the people didn't answer a word. They just kind of gave that Sunday morning oil painting look. Not a word. Direct challenge. How long will you hesitate, or you may have falter or waver? Literally, the word means to limp or to hobble, like you are between crutches. The image was given of a bird hopping. You know, birds, you hardly see a bird that walks. They all walk bad. I mean, they're hopping or they're doing, a penguin is just unbelievable how bad they walk. But birds just aren't walkers. And this word was used to describe how a bird would hop, and kind of the idea of a man who's got one foot on a curb, one foot on the street. You know, he's kind of walking very odd because of that. And he used that word to describe people who were trying to have some allegiance to the Lord and some allegiance to the world. It's just awkward. It doesn't work. And yet people are trying to do it in mass. It's impossible to do. You see all these bumper stickers, coexist. Here's all of these things. How long are you going to not make up your mind about which thing you're going to worship? You got all these different religions on this bumper sticker saying you need to give appreciation or tolerance to all of them. And now it's un-American now to embrace one faith and to have one strong belief system. And as Elijah says, make a decision. This is the place. Make a decision today. You need to take inventory about what gods you worship. Now today, we have gods of money, popularity, power, leisure, hobbies. This thing, phones.
Video game.
You walk out the house, oh, I left my God. Gotta go back and get my God. It's the thing that speaks to me. We have all these things that we choose, and when God is not the priority of our day, hearing His voice, seeking His presence, then we have dethroned Him. And we put other gods. And Elijah would come to us and say, you need to make a decision. I mean, this may be normal in America, but this ain't the way God means it to be done. And you can't believe the cost, spiritual cost, that you are experiencing because of it. So you have three groups here. You got Elijah, who's sold out to God, completely committed. You got the others, the prophets of Baal, who are opposed to the Lord. Then you got this big group in the middle that are trying to live in the middle. Jesus, He said no one can serve two masters. God and mammon is what He was talking about. He said either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. We love God until God says no to our other gods. We kind of get bummed out about it. Joshua 24, if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, choose for yourselves this day whom you're going to serve. Whether the gods of your forefathers beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you're living. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And then you got Revelation. I know your deeds, that you're neither cold nor hot. I would that you were cold or hot, but you're lukewarm. You're lukewarm. You're room temperature. You are just, whatever the culture is, that's what you are. Room temperature. And that's the church at Laodicea. And it says there that the church at Laodicea is a church that doesn't have enough Jesus to really enjoy Him, and has too much of the world, maybe too much of Jesus to enjoy the world completely. But it's the church that Jesus is knocking on the door. They're having a good time in there. They're saying, we are rich and wealthy. We got need of nothing. And Jesus is outside knocking on the door saying, can I come in and you can really experience me? I know you got a lot of resources and you can kind of purchase your faith somewhat, or your religion, but there's something better, and that's me. So He says, make a decision. Quit wavering. If you go for the world, go for the world. Just pray for a pig pen, like the prodigal found, to come as quickly as possible so you can get out of that world. If it's Jesus, go for it. Start plucking idols. Get rid of them. Start really living for Him. So He calls upon them to decide. This is the moment, decide, and they just look at Him. Just give Him the stare, the deer in the headlight. No decision is a decision. All right, verse 22. Then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left, a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. These are the odds, people. 450 to 1. Now let them give us 2 oxen. Let them choose whichever ox they want. Choose a cart, whatever. You pick the cart. And cut it up and place it on the wood. But put no fire under it. And I will prepare the other ox and lay it on the wood. And I will not put fire under it. Then you call upon the name of your God, and I'll call upon the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, He is God. And all the people said, that's a good idea. They're finally speaking. That sounds good. I think he forgot. Obadiah just said, I hid 100 preachers. And he's saying, I'm all alone. And he's going to hear in a little bit that there are 7,000 who haven't bowed the knee. But if I'm Elijah, I am up there going, okay, where are they? Why am I the only one here? Sounds like we got the odds, but they're not here. That moral majority in hiding in caves. You know, we have a MIA, missing in action. Oh, church has MFA, missing from action. Because prophets in caves don't do much good. And a lot of people, they get out each Sunday and they hide in their caves, their churches. And then they go back out into the world during the week with this secret faith. And then somebody at their work or their school or wherever is standing there thinking, looking around, saying, am I the only one? I thought there were thousands in that mega church on Sunday. But where are they now? At work, where they need to be standing up for Jesus. So Elijah, here he offers the prophets of Baal a challenge to their liking. They get their first pick of the bull. And then the one who answers is going to be the real God. But the way he's going to answer, that's right in their wheelhouse. Because Baal is the storm god. They attribute lightning to him. If anybody can answer by fire, by a lightning strike, it's him. So this is their guy. Now, the fire of the Lord communicates through the Bible the presence of God. Of course, those prophets of Baal weren't going to be Bible readers. But in Genesis 15, Abraham was working on that covenant. And whenever he'd cut them in half and gotten so tired of chasing birds and lay down, then here came a smoking oven, a fire, God's representation of himself. Moses, what did he see? A burning bush. He saw a burning bush representing God, the I am that I am. Yahweh, he descended on Sinai in fire, pillar of fire, directed him. In 2 Kings, Elijah is going to consume the troops. The fire coming down, 50 men at a time. And Paul says when Christ returns in 2 Thessalonians that he returns as a blazing fire. And the bull, that was their thing too. It symbolized strength and virility for Baal. And the lightning bolt indicated his power through the thunderstorm. Both of these, they couldn't control. As we're going to see here, their storm god wasn't sending rain for 3.5 years. And when they needed the fire to fall with the lightning, that God didn't do a very good job as well to show himself strong for their bull. So, verse 25, it says, Elijah said to the prophet of Baal, choose one ox for yourself and prepare it first for you are many, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. They took the ox that was given to them, and they prepared it, and they called on the name of Baal from morning until noon. Morning until noon. Y'all wouldn't like that, just morning until noon. That's like 5 hours just right there. Oh, Baal, answer us. You talk about 7-Eleven praise song. Same verse over and over. And imagine, oh, Baal, answer it. Oh, Baal, answer it. Oh, Baal, answer us. But there was no voice. No one answered. And they leaped about the altar which they made. Can you imagine 450 guys leaping around, saying that for 3, 4, 5 hours? What kind of racket that would be? How annoying. I'm surprised anybody was left after that went on for a while. And some people think that a loud church is a godly church where God's really excited to be there. Well, these guys, they were trying to do everything they could to manipulate God, running around screaming. And, prophets of Baal try to manipulate God instead of seeking his presence through holiness and faith. Came about at noon. Elijah just had enough. I'm tired. Starts mocking them. And I don't really see in the New Testament where it tells us to go and mock. But, there's a point that they push you to. And he mocked them, saying, call out with a loud voice, for he is God. Either he's occupied, or gone aside, or he's on a journey. Perhaps he's asleep and needs to be awakened. Maybe he's too busy. Maybe he's in the bathroom. Maybe he's on vacation. Or maybe he's just, you need to wake him up. However you guys wake up your God, you need to do it because he's sleeping through this. So they cried with a loud voice and cut themselves according to their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out on them. When midday was past, It's like 3 o'clock. They raved until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. This is brutal. These guys gone from bad to worse, louder to louder. Now they're gushing blood, raving. But there was no voice. No one answered. No one paid attention. They did everything they could to get results. Even self-affliction. I don't know if you've seen those YouTube videos of the Philippines during the Easter time where they afflict themselves. They walk and they march through the streets just until their backs are just bloody and bleeding. They can get on the cross and have nails driven in them. They actually get crucified. That'll get God's attention. That's what they thought with these prophets of Baal. And they had nothing left to do. They'd done everything they could to solve the problem. And the problem's still there. And we've thrown everything, as Americans, we've thrown everything we can to try to solve our problems. It's unbelievable how much money that we have spent trying to solve things, education, political programs, and things are worse than ever. In every election, you got people dancing around and doing all these theatrics. You know, their God seems asleep. Vacation, preoccupied, nothing changes. Yet they go all through all this extravagance because they're not connected with the real situation, problem, reason. So Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." And all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord which had been torn down. He took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Israel shall be your name." So with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench around the altar large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. Then he arranged the wood and cut the ox in pieces and laid it on the wood. Part of the problem is the altar's been torn down. God's place of worship is not what God's place of worship is supposed to be. It's been replaced. People have other motivations, other things they're committed to. They're serving their other gods. And he has to first start off by repairing the altar. And he does it by taking 12 stones, representing the tribes, because that's their biggest problem, is they're divided. This is a northern kingdom. Southern is down there with their 2. They've got 10 up here, so they're divided. He says the first thing you need to do is bring this divided nation back together. And I don't know if we started flinging stars from our flag, and which goes to left, which goes to right, we'd be surprised how divided we are. That's one of the biggest solutions to fixing this nation, is finding some point of commonality of what the right solution is. But here he says, fill 4 pitchers with water, pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. Then he said, do it a second time. And then they did it a second time, and he said, do it a third time. And they did it a third time. The water flowed around the altar, and he also filled the trench with water. Now, if I was sitting there watching, I would say, Elijah, don't you realize there's a drought? You're wasting water. We could be drinking that. But he just keeps dousing and dousing and dousing. He does this because, God loves disadvantage. He loves to be positioned in a way that there's no other explanation.
Amen.
Like with Gideon's army and stuff. And often the disadvantage that God's people puts in is really a place where when God acts, it puts those who are not God's people at a disadvantage. You think about the lion's den. This poor old Daniel, he's one guy, but who ended up getting eaten by the lions that were prepared for Daniel, or the fiery furnace that was prepared for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that ended up burning up the soldiers who were throwing them in. Or Haman, who built his little gallows for Mordecai. He ended up strung up on that himself. And even the Red Sea, that Pharaoh's army thought that they had trapped. All right, you guys are trapped, the Israelites. It was a trap for them. When they followed in and the sea came back over them, the trap sprung. They thought they had God's people at a disadvantage. But because they were a attacking God's people, God had them at a disadvantage. All right, Elijah's prayer. He's got everything ready. F.B. Meyer said, the men who stand the straightest in the presence of sin bow the lowest in the presence of God. And James 5:16-18 says, the effective prayer of a righteous man can accomplish much. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. He prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. Then he prayed again, where he's going to do right now, and the sky poured rain, and the earth produced fruit. Yeah. Prayer in the right hands, powerful. A guy named George Smith was a missionary in Africa, and from outward appearance, his missionary was a failure. He had only been in Africa for a short time, and he was driven from the country. He left behind only one convert, poor woman. He died a short time later on his knees praying for Africa. 100 years later, a missionary agency traced more than 13,000 converts back to his ministry. So he didn't live to see the answer to prayers, but God still answered them. Effective prayer can be prayed by a nature like ours. And the lasting answers going beyond a lifetime like ours. At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet came near and said, he's a short prayer, O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. This is probably the only time it says Israel instead of Jacob. Because Israel, you remember when the name changed to Israel, when he wrestled the angel, and that was where Jacob's life changed. He became Israel. They need to change. They need to make a decision and get their life back on track like it should be. And they need to be Israel instead of Jacob, who's wavering back and forth, supplanter. Let it be known that you are the God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their heart back again. Then, verse 38 says, the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones. That's hot. Start making lava out of rocks. And the dust licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, O Lord, he is God. Oh, the Lord, he is God. This reminds me of being at Shoguns, when they, and your eyebrows, you're checking for them. That hot flame when they light that oil on the little stove thing there. That's what happened in front of all these people. Whoa! Fire was hot. And Elijah said to them, while it's hot, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let one of them escape. So they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slew them there. That's a short verse, but I bet there was commotion and screaming and squalling. Now Elijah said to Ahab, Ahab's wondering what's going to happen to me now. Go up and eat and drink, for there is a sound of the roar of a heavy shower. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, but Elijah went to the top of Carmel, and he crouched down on the earth and put his face between his knees. He's not done praying yet. He's ready to pray in the ring. He puts his head between his knees, which is a birthing position at that time in the Middle East culture. And it's a position where you're experiencing a lot of pain, a lot of travail, and waiting for something to be birthed and to arrive. What you've been waiting on for 9 months, he's been waiting for 3.5 years. And so he is travailing in prayer. Real prayer is powerful. You can tell how much a church loves a preacher by who's here on Sunday morning, but you can tell how much they love the Lord by who's here at prayer meeting. Hudson Taylor, he made this as his kind of life motivation: to move man through God by prayer alone. To move man by God through prayer alone. So he didn't ask for money. In fact, when he went back to England after he'd been a missionary for quite a while, it was very popular, and he could have gone from church to church and asked for money. God put him on a bed of sickness, and all he could do was pray. He couldn't go ask for anything. He couldn't be present where people would be motivated by that. All he could do was lay there and pray. Lay there and pray. Corrie ten Boom, she said, "Is prayer your steering wheel or your spare tire?" Your steering wheel or your spare tire? Elijah is going to point the vehicle and go forward by prayer. He said to his servant, "Go up now and look toward the sea." So he went up and looked, and he said, "There's nothing." He said, "Go back 7 times. Came about the 7th time that he said, "Behold, a cloud as small as a man's hand is coming up from the sea." And he said, "Go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down, so that heavy shower does not stop you." 7 times, 7 days around Jericho, and the walls are going to fall. Naaman, you need to dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan. The 7th time, your skin's going to be like a newborn baby. Wouldn't that'd be great, wouldn't it? All of a sudden, all the wrinkles are gone, and warts and everything. We're gone. On the 7th time, and all he saw was a little sign the size of a man's hand, but that was all he needed. That's all he needed. All Jesus needed that day was a little boy with a lunch. That's all he needed. God was going to multiply this into a great, heavy storm. Ahab, you better get out of here. Radar says it's coming. In a little while, the sky grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy shower, and Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. And then the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins, and he outran Ahab to Jezreel. This is what I respect right here. This is what stands out to me. 17, 18 miles, he outruns a chariot. They're having to hold up that skirt and go all the way there. That's a man. Of course, it was downhill, Carmel, but still, that's impressive. But what does Ahab do? He takes a whooping on Mount Carmel. Well, I'm going to go tell Jezebel. He runs straight to Jezebel. And Satan's big weapon in that day was a woman. And Satan isn't done. Jezebel's going to strike out after Elijah, and she gets Elijah's attention. He knows how dangerous she is. The Bible says Satan prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. He's always looking for a fight. But when God's people are weak and worldly, Satan's job is done before he does it. And then somebody raises their head. He says, "I got an opponent." Grabs his best tools and he goes after him. So Jezebel's going to come after Elijah. Remember in the book of Acts that sons of Sceva went in and tried to cast out that demon? They said, "I know Jesus. I know Paul. I don't know who you guys are." Satan knows. He knows who his enemies are. Well, here's 4 things. Revival won't come as long as, number 1, God's people's hearts are divided. Choose Jesus or the world. Revival won't come as long as God's people's hearts are divided. Revival won't come as long as God's people are divided. 12 stones together showed what the tribes should be, and they weren't. And the church has never been more divided on this earth than it is in America today. We've set the bar for division. And if any nation looks at us, our church is defined probably number 1 by division, when we were supposed to be defined by unity. Number 3, God's people. A revival won't come as long as God's people are not willing to face the enemy. Tolerance destroys truth. And God won't be redefined by our fears. not willing to face the enemy. And number 4, God's people, revival won't come as long as God's people are not willing to move forward by faith alone. They're not willing to be in a position of disadvantage and still go forward, just based on God's word. As long as God's people are not willing to move forward by faith alone. So revival's not going to come until those things are true. The fire is not going to fall. We need an Elijah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the Bible says these are the days of Elijah. You know, we need the Elijah of these days, is what one guy said. Let me close by George McCloskey started praying 1 hour a day out of concern for his children's spiritual lives. He prayed for his kids, 2 daughters, prayed for his grandkids and his great-grandkids. His 2 daughters married men who became pastors. Those 2 couples produced 4 girls and 1 boy. The girls all married pastors, and the boy became one. The first 2 kids of that next generation, his great-grandkids, grew up and were college roommates. One surrendered to the ministry his sophomore year, while the other did not feel the same calling. He pursued a career in psychology. He graduated, started to write books about parenting, and eventually started a radio program on thousands of radio stations. Focus on the family. His name was James Dobson. Goes all the way back to great-grandfather, decided, I'm going to take an hour a day from 11 to noon. Started praying for those 2 girls, praying for their kids, and praying for their kids.
Makes a difference.
The effective prayer of a righteous man can accomplish much. All right, any thoughts?